Hello, one and all, to the XP Billionaires. You got Rafe here, we got Irene, we got Sky, and we've got a grand season finale for you. Hooray! We've made it through a season.
Woo!
Hello.
Yeah, so we've got our game of the years for you, or at least specifically our RPG of the years. So 2018 has been a decent year for RPGs. We had quite a few JRPGs. We had the couple of Western ones coming here and there, which has been really nice. So yeah, it's just what was our favorite this year? I guess that's going to be the big question. If you listened last week, you may know one of ours, but
No,
not
it
all of
was totally
ours.
not obvious enough.
No, no, not at all. But
So why doesn't Irene go first?
you know what? Let's just get it out of the way.
Buckle up.
Okay, all right. Well then, you know what? Let's get her done. All right, Irene, give us your game of the year.
So my game of the year is the PS4 exclusive God of War. And this is somebody who has never been interested in previous God of War entries, in that the character of Kratos, while interesting, just never really appealed to me in terms of just being this unstoppable rage monster who never really found a problem that he couldn't solve by punching. Like, that's kind of been his whole thing. But now within this scenario, he's finally found a problem that he can't just punch and fix. And that's dealing with his relationship with his son. So I'm going to back up a little bit and talk a little bit in broad strokes. God of War tells a beautiful, introspective story focused on a theme that's more often explored in film than it is in video games. A strained relationship between a child and a parent. And that's not something like a theme that intimate is not necessarily something you see very often in games. The whole game revolves around a single quest that Kratos and Atreus are trying to fulfill, which is to scatter their Kratos' wife and Atreus' mother's ashes on the highest peak in all of the realms. And just that simple quest takes them on this sweeping, epic journey across basically a landscape steeped in Norse mythology. So they never actually give you like a location that it's set in, but it's clearly, Scandinavian and northeastern Europe. And I can't even get over how amazing it is. These landscapes that this really small and rather delicate story is told are epic, such as like when Kratos and Atreus are actually crawling over a literal giant corpse. So it's a corpse of a giant who forms basically this entire area. Like Kratos is the size of one of his eyes, and perhaps like is a little shorter than one of its fingernails. So it's quite, just to give you a sense of scale. And Kratos is not small. He's pretty much 100% meat.
Mm.
And within that, they have these, like, I can't keep using the word epic over and over again, but I'm going to epic boss fights where the camera and the action moves seamlessly between in-engine combats and choreographed cutscenes. Like there's no separation. It just flows incredibly neatly into these scenes, which make it seem so amazing. Like they can do some pretty fun stuff. Like close to the beginning of the game, you have a fight with the stranger who comes to Kratos' house, and during that fight, you basically destroy the land around your house. Like there's a ravine there. It wasn't there before you had that fight. And as you go through it, you're actually like seeing that like the force of their conflict actually tearing up the landscape around them. And they achieve that by using this sort of fluid camera. Which, by the way, this entire game is done without a single loading screen. So you're never ever jarred out of the environment. So whenever I see it, like the camera's sort of like over the shoulder, but whenever a scene occurs, the game sort of like borrows the camera from the player and then gives it back very smoothly at the end. Which, anecdotally, I heard was a massive development challenge. Like, incredibly challenging for the actual developers creating this. But the effect that it gave at the end was just absolutely worth it. It created this world that felt real. So you're completely immersed in this story. You never have to worry about, like a loading bar ever. And one of the things that this game did incredibly well is it used these fantastic visuals to convey like these tiny expressions on Kratos' features. So Kratos is a character that doesn't speak with a whole lot of inflection, but his voice actor managed to put a shit ton of personality into. So like props to that guy. But at the same time, in order to convey the depth of this struggle he's having, where he's dealing with the fact that he knows he is a shit person and trying desperately not to ruin his son and not knowing how to really do it, since, he carries his former children with him everywhere. Literally, it's why he's gray. Yeah, this quick note for folks who are unfamiliar with the lore. Kratos' former family, he accidentally murdered them at the behest of a god, and they cursed him to wear their ashes on his skin forever. That's why he's that color. And they used the engine and the visuals to convey these tiny micro expressions that show you that Kratos is really trying to reconcile, trying to hide his past from Atreus in order to, well, A, not completely lose his respect because that's all he's got, and B, to not ruin him, which is incredibly challenging. Any parent would know that not ruining your kid is job one. And Kratos, having basically no empathy in his body, is struggling titanically with it. He's finally, as I said, he's finally encountered an issue he can't solve by breaking it. And trust me, you employ break it a lot to solve your problems in the game. It is commented on many, many times that Kratos is the master at creative destruction. And the story, which is the central focus of it, is at times incredibly heart-wrenching, getting the player so emotionally invested in the journey, but it's not without its levity as well. So this world, which, is so sparsely populated, because there's pretty much only like 3 or 4 NPCs in the whole game. And yet, I never felt like it was big and empty. It actually helped add to the intimacy in my view. And from a laughs perspective, you had Brock and Sindri, the shop masters, which whoever wrote those two deserves an award. They're amazing. You have Brock, your typical rough and tumble dwarf who swears and spits and is, kind of gross and doesn't particularly care for nonsense. And then you have Sindri, his fastidious brother, who is probably the Norse world's first germaphobe. Oh yeah, there are a few sequences where Kratos gives Sindri his axe to enhance, and Sindri literally carries it like in his palms flat, arms out, as far away from his little dwarf body as he can, trying not to gag because it's bloody. Oh yeah. There's entire sequences where you have to wait for Sindri to heave because he's like, oh god, that's so disgusting. Why? In late game, there's a sequence in which you have to ask him about an eye. I won't tell you which one. But it actually takes him about 5 minutes to explain this story between just constantly. And his brother, Brock, is standing there and he's just like, wait, he'll get it. He'll get there. Just wait. So these two dwarves, which by the way, I say are the true testament to Kratos' growth from previous installments in the series, in that they're not turned to paste immediately. They're really annoying, and you can tell that Kratos finds them really annoying. I think they're amazing. Probably because they annoy Kratos to no end. But they make for
fun.
Exactly. They make for these great moments of levity, to the point where there's an option to talk to Brock and Sindri at the shops. And I always take it. It is just Atreus shooting the shit with them, and it's hilarious. Because it's not just like, hey, how's it going? It's always like, oh, what are you working on now? And there's like this big involved almost interplay between Atreus and the two shopkeepers, where Kratos is just kind of standing there listening in. Like, the player is standing there listening in, but he has nothing to add. Kratos does not mince words, therefore, why would he say anything? So
He has a small talk score of negative 100.
a small talk score. Try being a normal social human. Like, Kratos lives in the middle of the wilderness for a reason. In fact, all of his attempts to live with other people, his attempts to live with other people in the previous installments of the series ended with there being no more Greek pantheon because he murdered them all. So,
Fair.
yeah, the fact that there's still, I'm just getting little spoiler, there is still a Norse pantheon by the time you're done the game. So he hasn't killed all of them. Significant growth there.
Is it sad we have to label that as a spoiler?
I don't know. There are other spoilers that I could mention, but I'm not going to because really, for fear of just giving away some of the big moments at the end of the game where initially I was like, I could go for a sequel of this. Like, let's have Atreus hit puberty. It's gonna be awesome. Kratos will have to deal with like, you don't understand me, Dad, without punching it, which is gonna be another test. But based on the ending of this game, I would say actually I would prefer if the sequel picked up exactly where the game lets off and moves into more of that story because there's definitely more to tell there. And from what I heard, it sold extremely well. So I'm hoping that Sony will make another one because this game to me is a masterpiece. I'm still sort of living it even now. It tells a story that is so seldom told in games. It tells it extremely well. And you still don't lose out on those epic fights with like dragons and gods and even side fights like with the Valkyries. Which, by the way, the hardest boss in the game is a badass lady, so that's kind of cool. Shout out to the badass ladies. Woo!
There you go.
Exactly. So, for everybody who wasn't particularly a fan of the original ones, mainly because the original ones tended to be, a little bit, they're old, so I'm going to say it, they can be a bit sexist, especially with, the infamous sex mini games. I had no interest in that sort of stuff, but now it seems that Kratos has matured as a person and as a character into a grumpy old man who now has to deal with the fact that he is a single parent and try not to fuck up. Which is, he's got no emotional intelligence. It's an incredibly massive challenge. So it's great to see these two characters from the beginning where they like have barely spoken 2 words to each other Atreus' entire life, now thrust into this adventure together. And to see their growth and their growth in the relationship across the entire narrative is just, it's so rewarding. Anyway, God of War, 11 billion out of 10. Please make more, Sony. Please.
They'd be stupid not to at this point.
It sold so well.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent choice, and you definitely, you made me want to play it. I will play it eventually.
It's well worth the time, and it still has the elements of like RPG elements where you're kitting out Kratos with like different gear that affects his stats and different skills that you can use, and it's really customizable. So you're not necessarily stuck with like just a single move set. For example, you get runic attacks, heavy and light, and many of them, so you can set your 2 attacks that you like the best. By the end of the game, I think I had like a light runic attack that was literally just a frost beam. So whenever things got too close to me, I was like, no! Go in! And push them back.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it allows you to
Alright.
control the area around Kratos as well. Oh, and one more thing. Just one more thing before I go.
Okay.
There is a point in the game where Kratos and Atreus are fighting. And from a mechanics perspective, you are constantly able to control Atreus in combat by using the square button. In that sequence where they are fighting, Atreus stops listening to you. And it's very small and very short, but from a mechanical, like, solving, like, things like ludonarrative dissonance, that was just, like, mwah, like, perfect. Anyway, continue. I just wanted to add that in because I thought that was an extremely nice touch.
Okay, no, that's great. Okay, so who's next? Flip a coin? I don't know. What should we
Thank you
do?
for listening so attentively while I just like, blah!
I'll go.
Okay, go for it.
Yes.
All right. So my game of the year is Atelier Lydia and Suelle. Surprising no one who knows me.
Not really, no.
So I really like this one, and my expectations had been very low for an Atelier title because the last one they put out, Atelier Furus, was the worst one I have played in a really long time.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah. Like it was fun. They did like an open world thing and the environments were cool and all that. But the characters and story didn't have the same kind of punch I was used to. So I was really, really disappointed in that. Lydia and Suelle, much better. They ditched the completely open world of Fierce, but keep decent size and detailed environments. And if people are familiar with the PS3 Atelier entries, that was a criticism you could say of those games where they didn't make the environments detailed enough.
Yeah,
Visually
I
interesting.
remember Verona where they had like a map that was like you would go to different areas on the map and it would be sort of disjointed, so you didn't necessarily have like the big flowing area to really
Yeah,
move around in.
and even then the areas weren't necessarily that detailed. But Lydia and Suelle, they were really good that way. The alchemizing was as fun as ever. The characters were really rather entertaining. I really loved the protagonists in this one. Um, Lydia is a more traditional Atelier protagonist. She's got her staff. She's kind of thin and puny. Like yeah, a gust of wind could blow her over. That's what
As
she
is
looks.
standard.
And Suelle is more of she's still kind of girly dressed, but she's got this whole tomboy attitude. She's got dual pistols until you realize very quickly in the game that Liddy is actually way braver than Suelle.
So a
Way,
strong wind can knock her over, but she's like, screw it, I'm going at it.
yeah. And also Suelle is terrified of ghosts, and when the single most recurring character in Atelier games is a ghost, this comes up fairly frequently. Yes, Pamela returns
Oh,
as
it's
ever.
Pamela!
Pamela returns, and when Suelle figures out she's a ghost, she flips out, and it's beautiful.
I love
Uh,
Pamela. It's been so long since I've seen her. Does she
yeah,
recur in all of the Atelier games, or?
she's in most of them.
Ooh. I must
Yeah,
have. I didn't play far enough into Verona to see her again, but I remember from her from Manacamia, and she was just. I loved Pamela.
yeah. Sometimes, like it depends. Sometimes there's very occasionally she's been a playable character, but most of the time she appears as an NPC with a series of side quests and often her own shop.
Aw.
Um, yeah, she's, you know, they try and fit her in some role. One of the things that was really unique about this one is that they could go really over the top with the locations because the girls are literally diving into paintings, the
Oh, that's
world
cool.
paintings. Yeah, it's so they can be really wild. For example, one of the early paintings is like this super cheesy Halloween painting. So there's all sorts of goofy looking ghosts and eyes staring at you from out the woods. Like imagine every Halloween trope and throw it in an area, and it's so funny.
Oh, that sounds like they were able to really be artistic with it because of the.
Oh
They didn't have to be like, well, the rules of the world say that this stuff doesn't float. It's like, make it float. It's inside a painting.
exactly. So it's really great that way, and it makes the areas really interesting. And almost all the playable characters are alchemists, which is unusual. There's only one character out of the 6 playable who is not an alchemist, Matthias, who's kind of assigned early on as your bodyguard because the princess who the girls seem to know personally. It's a very low key kind of kingdom, I guess. She's like, you guys are in way over your head. Have a bodyguard, my brother. And then they get joined up with the previous alchemists that have been in this series for the most part. And my favorite is actually Fyrus.
Despite you not liking the game.
Despite me not getting, here's what they did. You see, in Fyrus, Fyrus herself was the traditional, strong wind can blow you over kind of alchemist with her staff and hiding behind everyone else. And when she departs in her game, she goes with her sister, who's an archer, Leanne. Well, in the intervening years, Leanne taught Fyrus how to use a bow.
Oh.
Yes, you have a bowman alchemist, and she's amazing. She does like all sorts of fancy like ice techniques thrown in, like she can make things explode into ice with her arrows, and she does all these acrobatic moves in the air when she fires, and it's just awesome to watch.
I already like Ice Archer.
So yeah, I mean it's a great game. The combat is good. The supporting characters can hop in to help the main 3 that are out. So yeah, game of the year. I was really pleasantly surprised by this one, and I think Gus knocked it out of the park again.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear because, it's always disappointing when you're a longtime fan of a series and a particular entry just sort of falls flat.
Yeah.
I'm glad that the trend did not continue for you.
Yay, thank you. All right, Rafe.
Okay, well, my game of the year. For those of you who listened last week, you might have an idea of what my game of the year is. However, I didn't gush nearly as much as Irene did. But for me, my choice was Dragon Quest XI. I was very impressed with everything that was done. First and foremost, it is a traditional JRPG. It felt exactly like something I would have played back in my childhood, just slightly jazzed up with a little bit more customization. But it was, like we were talking about last week, it was really a very straightforward combat system. There wasn't a lot of extra you could do with it. It wasn't just an extra command you could add at some point during your turn. But I didn't realize how much I was looking for that until I started playing it. There were a couple of games that came close. Octopath Traveler was one of them. I couldn't maintain it. As much as I liked the idea and everything that they did with the game, having the 8 storylines just was too much. And I know I didn't have to do them all, but like for a game like that where everything converges at the end, you kind of want to. And I couldn't bring myself to keep going, which was really unfortunate.
There's a bit of a weakness there in that if you're really uninterested in one particular character, it's like, well, now what?
Well, exactly. And in this case with Dragon Quest, you were just the main character the whole time. You were the luminary. You were born with a task to dispel the darkness but it also meant that you were a portent of things to come. And that made a lot of people not like you. So they considered you an enemy of the state. So you were on the run a lot of the time while you were trying to fulfill your destiny. And every character that you interacted with, every character that became a member of your party felt like they belonged there. They joined up with you for one reason or another, whether it was for their own reasons or because they were guided to the luminary. But at the same time, they all had their individual stories. They had their own unique characteristics. I mean, I was a little disappointed. 2 characters didn't get a lot of backstory, a lot of character development. Jade, Veronica, those were the two that didn't
Oh,
get
it's
them.
too bad. Veronica was my favorite. A bossy,
Uh,
tiny girl.
oh yeah, I mean, don't worry, she gets plot, but in terms of actual character development, there's a reason why there's not a lot that happens with her. And if you go back to it at some point, Irene, you're about to find out why. You're
Yeah, I will
very
go back to it
finding out.
eventually. I got sidetracked by the giant wad of Kratos meat.
Yeah, and that's fine. But once you get back into it, just be prepared. That's all I have to say. It's not a fight. It's just when the story hits, it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks.
I would not be surprised. This game definitely, from what I played of it, I mean, at first I was a little bit like, come on, guys, because it was like, it's not much of a spoiler to say right out of the gate, your mom's like, okay, kid, I know you just turned 16, but you're the Messiah. Go have your destiny. And I was like, okay, that's a little bit ham-fisted, but okay. The
Oh
rest
yeah,
of the game more than makes up for that, though. And
oh
I'm
it,
not quite sure what her motivation was for that, but I just found it a bit awkward.
it certainly does. And one of the things, like I was talking about last week, when you get that first credits roll, you absolutely have to reload your game because that will start an entire third chapter of story. And it's worth it. It's a very, very grindy thing. It's actually not that long in terms of the actual story itself, but you do have to do a lot of grinding because then a real final boss shows up. So the guy you're hunting this first game is actually not the biggest problem.
They never
And
are in Dragon Quest games.
true. But I mean, you could just let it go. You could leave things as they are. Like they give you a full credit roll. You have completed this game. But if you don't like that ending, and I'll be honest, nobody should like that ending. Um, you want to do more. You want to play it through the rest. You get the opportunity to, without going into too much detail, you get to undo what was done, and it's 100% worth it. You get and like I was saying before, you get this beautiful ending sequence that ties this game into all the other Dragon Quest games that have existed in the past. I remember when I was watching this final cinematic and a name was mentioned that a title was basically bestowed upon the luminary. When that name came out, like my jaw dropped because I knew exactly who that person was, that title was, what it meant for the rest of the series, and it made me understand how it fit. I almost broke down into tears watching that scene, and then the credit roll right after it was, yeah, it was an emotional ride for me, and that I haven't had that response from an RPG in a very long time, or even any game in general. Um, I think the last time was probably the end of Dreamfall Chapters, wasn't it, Sky?
Yeah, I don't know. I was too busy bawling for like an hour and a half.
It's so true. But like I could have just as easily broken down during that. I kept my cool, don't worry. But
I
um,
cried enough for the two of us.
that's true. But even with Dragon Quest, like I could not close my mouth. My jaw was hanging so low with that ending, and that more than anything else. I mean, there's not a lot to say about the game other than it is a traditional JRPG. It is what we don't get every single year anymore. We used to get it all the time back in the old days, but now, you get this one that just feels not only that like you're playing a brand new game, but you're also playing something you like with a system that you've been with for the majority of your life. And that's why it gets my game of the year.
I'll also add, like, from a system perspective, like having played Dragon Quest VIII, I believe was the last, major console release in the series in the West. From a skills and character building perspective, I found 11 to be much more generous. in that like you were actually able to learn more than one skill family if you absolutely had to. Whereas in Dragon Quest VIII, I was like, nope, this character is whips, and that's it. There wasn't enough skill points to go around.
Yeah, you had to build the character that one way back in those days. Like I never played the remake, but I did play the original back on the PS2, and it's actually one of the few that I've fully finished. Like I've finished the very first one, I finished 8, and I finished 11 now. Every other one I've dabbled into, and unfortunately, the older games failed to have a rudder. They didn't have a lot to tell you where to go next.
Like I
And
really did enjoy 8. I just really didn't like the fact that I was so restricted in building my characters.
well, that's the thing. There wasn't as much customization choice back then in older games too. Like like most games didn't give you that option. I mean, even most Final Fantasy games back in those days were very like this is what your one character does. 12 being the exception, but unless you were just wanted to grind license points for the rest of your life, you had to take a path and just kind of go with it.
Oh yeah, I definitely did that when I played 12. I had certain characters go down certain paths, and when they were done those paths, then and only then were they allowed to branch out.
Yeah, no,
But I
exactly.
found that from Dragon Quest VIII, like you couldn't branch out. You had to pick because it just didn't give you enough skill points in order for you to get any of the high level skills you would need by the end of the game.
Yeah, yeah, no,
So,
exactly.
but in Dragon Quest XI, I feel that they fixed that significantly in that as you level up, it's more generous with skill points, so that you're able to say, okay, well, I want this character to be mainly this, but in a pinch, I also want this.
Yeah, no, exactly. Okay, so we got a little bit of time left. Nice and quick. Let's just, you don't have to go into too much detail, but let's talk about what we're looking forward to in 2019. I've got two things. First one is Digimon Survive. It was announced recently. It's a strategy Digimon game, so a strategy role playing game. So I'm really excited about that, and it's going to have some visual novel aspects to it as well, and something about potentially like permadeath systems with your tamers. So I don't know. Like, there's not a lot of information yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing that. And the other one, not necessarily a game, but I know in February the PS4 is getting an RPG maker, and that looks interesting. So we've got that on pre-order, and I'm going to play around with it. And who knows? Maybe we'll have the XP Billionaires, the game. Who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe someday.
we can all be playable characters.
Yeah. Irene, what are you looking forward to?
Okay, as for me, Kingdom Hearts 3 is actually scheduled to release next year, maybe. I mean, right
Schedule.
now it says next year, but like I've been waiting
Don't
for
hold
this
your
game
breath.
since I was in high school. And folks, I don't want to tell you how long ago that was because it will significantly date me. But let's just say the PS2 era was during my high school years. And I have been waiting for Kingdom Hearts 3 since then. I am excited, but completely prepared for that game to be absolute dog shit because, it's been a very long time. The Duke Nukem Forever effect is definitely in play.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So it
Any other
really
any other
depends.
ones?
Neo 2. I
Yes.
loved the first one. In fact, like people will always say like, "Oh, Dark Souls, they're the best." I'm like, I like Dark Souls, but I like Bloodborne and Neo more. I don't know what it is. I like the combat, but I like the flavor of like the coat of paint, the aesthetic of Gothic Victorian um, steeples and the feudal Japanese setting. Like those things really resonated with me. There better still be Kodama though. Kodama are the
Yeah.
best things. And
All
last thing that I don't know much about, Cyberpunk 2077. Just because CD Projekt Red did an amazing job with Witcher 3, so I'm interested to see what they do with a very different genre.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely the one to watch for. All right, Sky, you're up. What are you looking forward to?
Well, assuming it doesn't come out before the end of the year, because I'm a little fuzzy on when it's actually going to come out, is Get in the Car, Loser. It's an indie RPG by Christine Love, the visual novel auteur. It's her first RPG, and it looks like um, 80s lesbian road trip, and something about killing God. It looks awesome. It looks
See,
awesome.
I thought Mean Girls immediately.
Yeah,
Which is an amazing movie, but
it sounds fantastic. And of course, there's always going to be an Atelier title, Nelka and the Legendary Alchemists,
Yes.
where we get to see all these familiar faces from all previous Atelier games.
I know which one you're looking forward to see.
I'm looking forward to many, many, many of them.
I'm gonna go with Stir.
Yes. Shh.
Well, this is a good year.
He's so happy.
This is a good year for you too, because you're very likely to get a second Atelier game this year as well. You'll probably be getting Atelier Lulua.
Yes, that too. And honestly, if Stirk is not her father, I will be very sad, because Lulua is Verona's daughter.
Oh, someone
Verona.
ships them so hard.
And yes, I ship Verona and Stirk so hard. So if Stirk's not the dad, I will cry. I will be in tears I will be a puddle on the floor. Anyway.
Hopefully, Gust will take a page out of Blizzard's handbook and just don't ruin the ships.
We shall see. We shall see.
All right. Well, this has been a great start to what I hope is going to be a very, very interesting future for us. I've been having a lot of fun doing this. It looks like you guys have been too. And I hope everyone who's been listening has been enjoying themselves as well. We're still going to be around on Twitter. You'll be able to find me at Billionaires XP. Sky, where are you?
Sky Knight XP on Twitter.
And Irene.
iRogue _ XP. So that's I like iPhone and Rogue.
Yeah, awesome. And in order to help us out, I know I keep saying buy us a coffee, but if you guys are definitely interested in seeing more in the future, basically what the coffee program is for us is to help us pay for our podcast server for the next year. So we're looking for about $100. So every small donation is going to go specifically towards that. And we're at coffee.com/XP Billionaires. If you can give us a help with that, that will help us keep the episodes available currently and will let us put more on at the same time. But one way or the other, we still appreciate all of your support, all of your listening. Please like, subscribe, share with everyone. Go back and listen to us again if you really enjoy us. But once again, thanks so much, and we'll see you in the new year.
Bye. Play God of War.
Bye-bye.
Bye.